apologise, I'm not a natural public speaker, so I am sort of read lots of notes. So my background is that I've worked in the fashion and apparel industry for about 20 years. I left high school and went on to Messi Fashion School and graduated from there in 2002. And for the next sort of 5 or 6 years, I worked around New Zealand for some small designers and factories, and I was predominantly working as a computer pattern maker and sample machinist, which basically means I get a picture from a designer and then I turn that into a make a pattern and turn that into a garment, and then it's run through production. So after I'd been in the fashion industry over here for 5 or 6 years, I moved over to Brighton in England, and I got an amazing job as a production manager for a couturier. And a couturier is someone who makes couture dresses. So the sort of things you see on like the red carpets for the Oscars, Grammys and Emmys, and it was an incredible job. So that was in London, so I was commuting between the two, and it was just absolutely fabulous. We would spend months and months and months making these dresses that sort of ranged from about 20 to 120,000 pounds. All of them were sort of hand embellished, handcrafted, and while I was there, there was a team of sort of between 3 to 5 of us who were there full time. And then we had usually an army of very eager interns who were either recent graduates or just about to graduate from fashion schools around London. And so while I was there, it was not so much the dressmaking that was challenging, but managing such a sort of variety of staff. Often there was a lot of competition between the interns as to what sort of jobs they wanted. There were definitely jobs that were more sought after, and like hand beading or hand appliquing lace, and then there were the jobs that no one really wanted to do, hand sewing feathers, which you could sort of get stuck doing for weeks in a room, you know, just around a table. So managing everyone and keeping everyone happy was a big part of that. After I'd been there for about 5 years, I decided one wintry evening that I could no longer handle the commute as I stood on a platform in the snow, and that I was going to move back to Brighton. So I went back to Brighton and started working for an amazing dressmakers there who made vintage style dresses and wedding dresses from vintage and reclaimed fabrics. And that was an awesome team, really, really very different to the high pressure I'd just come from in London. And it was a very, very experienced team, so I wasn't dealing with interns either, which was really nice and refreshing. Then in 2017, unfortunately my dad became unwell and I moved back to New Zealand. He passed away shortly afterwards. And when I got back here, there was sort of the realisation that the industry that I'd worked in prior to going overseas really had collapsed. And that had sort of been from years prior, when all the tariffs from overseas garments or imported garments, the tariffs were removed, and it made the mass manufacture of clothing from overseas really easy to get into New Zealand. And unfortunately, because of the high cost of labour in New Zealand, people just couldn't compete. So lots and lots of those small designers and factories that I'd worked for previously had actually taken their work offshore, which is a real shame. So I spent sort of the first year I was back trying to find my feet, and I was working from home doing small production runs for sort of a few designers that were still left. And I also at that time thought it was a good idea to do a business course, And what I learned from that business course mostly was that it is not for me. And if I ever do start a business, I desperately need a partner to help me with that side of it. And I'm definitely more on the creative side of things. Yeah, it's a good thing to realise. So then I just happened to come across a job ad for a machinist at NISA, and I thought, oh, that sounds like me, totally aligns with my values, love the ethical side of it. So I got hold of the owner, Alicia, who has really graciously joined us today, and went and met her and had a rather hilarious moment when she mistook me for a customer and tried to hand me a size 8 gingham bikini as I walked in. And anyway, we ended up having a chat after I'd sort of got over the initial giggles. And she offered me the role of job sharing the production manager role. And which was amazing, and I sort of thought, you know, back to Outrageous Fortune and Cheryl West and, you know, becoming a underwear magnate. And really the rest is history. So I've been there full-time since the end of lockdown, and running the production involves sort of lots of things. So I do a lot on the production side because it's a small company. It's not sort of split out like it would be in some bigger operations. So I make the samples and initial patterns once we've got a design. So either our in-house designer Emily or an external designer comes in and does that, and then I make them up, send them off to our fabulous cutters in Auckland, and they cut them, send them back, and then I train all the staff on what we're doing and how to make things, and then we produce them there. So it's a really cool role to be in. And I think the biggest responsibility I've got is actually looking after the sewing team. And so the sewing team are from refugee and migrant backgrounds, and often they've just quite recently arrived in New Zealand, and they usually come either just with their immediate family or sometimes even by themselves, and they don't have a massive support network. So really it's our role to help them with anything they might need. So it's like, could be immigration stuff, helping them with any sort of documents that they might need, helping them buy things like winter jackets that they just don't know what it is. You know, they've often never had to have anything like that before. So we sort of look after them overall and help them with anything that their families may need as well. So this morning I'm here to talk to you about the matriarchy, and if I can have, oh sorry, I've missed a slide. So I'm here to talk to you about matriarchy, a system of society or government ruled by a woman or women, a form of social organisation in which descent and relationship are reckoned through the female line, the state of being an older, powerful woman in a family group, which we definitely are at NISA. So turning now to what the matriarchy means to me, if we have the next slide please. This is my nana, and was probably the first matriarchal figure in my life. She was an amazing woman. She raised 6 children predominantly on her own, and was always just a kind, caring person that you could just go and have a chat with if ever you needed advice. She married and buried 4 husbands, none too suspicious circumstances, but was just a really awesome woman, and also was often dressed to the nines and dripping in costume jewellery, so was my first style icon as a wee kid. The next person I really was a really massive influence in my life was my high school sewing teacher, who managed to get about 10 of us from my year. She managed to encourage us and inspire us into all going on to do fashion. I think that's a massive thing to get 10 teenagers inspired enough that they all want to go and study fashion. So that's what we all did. Awesome woman. She actually came and bought the whole New Zealand Textile Teachers Association for a tour through NISA last year. Awesome woman. We can go to the next slide, please. So this is the NISA team. Great, beautiful bunch of ladies. What the matriarchy means to us at NISA, we have a very, very strong team dynamic at NISA. The team is, as you can see, entirely made up of women. We have no guys working with us. Occasionally we have our lovely, lovely father and son mechanic team come in, but otherwise it really is an all-female workplace, which is awesome. Oh, sorry, I have just lost my place. Bear with me. There's definitely challenges working at NISA, and some of them are things like you never realise how different cultures perceive different things. So, or how you communicate with body language and with words. So it's often, it is quite a challenge to make sure everyone understands everything how it's intended. For example, in New Zealand, if we were to say, you're doing okay, it doesn't always mean that you're doing amazingly. It can sometimes mean you're not doing that great. But in other languages, if you say, you're doing okay, it just means you're doing okay. So it is always a challenge to make sure, everyone is on the same page. We also put a lot of effort into onboarding new staff. When we invite them for an interview, we give them an overview of how everything works in New Zealand employment. We make sure they understand about holiday pay, KiwiSaver, sick leave, all the things. So there's quite a lot to sort of communicate when you are coming from somewhere that is so different. And to help everyone bond and to sort of encourage everyone's confidence with speaking English, we all try to have our breaks together. So it means at morning and afternoon tea, we usually just sit and chat. And at lunchtime, we'll often play a language game, which really, really does encourage everyone's language, and it really does help out a lot. And music's also a big part of the NISA way of life. We encourage everyone to get really, really familiar with Spotify in the workroom. And while I may put on a lot of 80s bangers, we also listen to everything from, we often have a Salsa Friday, which is great. We listen to cumbia, Somali pop, and the current fave is the Tamil Top 20. I'll try to put up some playlists because they're amazing, but yeah, that's also a really nice way for everyone to sort of feel included, to have other people recognise and appreciate the music that they're used to listening to. Sorry, I'm just going to have a little water. Oh dear, it's all going horribly. So the other big thing we do is birthdays at NISA. We want everyone to feel special and appreciated and wanted. So often for birthdays, people may have had in years prior more pressing things than a birthday celebration to sort of focus on. So we really try to make sure we have a celebration for everyone's birthday, and sometimes people do try to keep it under wraps a little bit, but it just means to help everyone feel really appreciated, really special. I always make sure we've got a cake, we always have a card, a shared lunch, and there is usually a terrible but rousing rendition of Happy Birthday from me. Which is just a lovely way. Everyone loves a birthday, I'm sure. We also introduce new staff to the NISA way of production, which a lot of our staff have worked in the fashion and apparel industry before, some of them in absolutely massive factories overseas, the likes we've never had in New Zealand. So getting them to come around to the NISA way of production, which is very, very different. So they, in big offshore factories, they may produce tens of thousands of the same garment in each run. At NISA, our smallest run would be 6 garments, and our biggest run might be 70, I think. So it's a very different way of producing, and sometimes you do have to go against what you think is, or what some staff members may think is the correct way of doing, or the way they're used to doing things, which is just putting through as much as they can. We actually like to finish our garments as we go. So I suppose the biggest thing about managing this team is you need to be kind, caring and compassionate when you're dealing with them. Truckloads of patience. And for those of you, and there are a few people here that I know that they are not the most natural things that come to me. So I really do have to sometimes sit down and give myself a bit of a talking to about how I want the workroom to run, and I want it to be a happy, friendly, inclusive place. So those traits of kindness, caring, compassion and patience are probably the biggest things that I need to remember when we are dealing with everyone. Yeah, and that's kind of what I think the matriarchy is, or what it means to me. It's women leading and doing it with kindness, caring and compassion. And I think that's the thing that I love working about at work. That's the thing I love most working at NISA. I love being a woman, leading women, and in a kind, caring and compassionate way. And I hope that we get more and more women in leadership roles throughout New Zealand. And if we can go to the last slide. Thank you. And that brings it to the end of my talk today. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Thanks to Dallas, Sahar, Ash, and the team. And I really, really hope this was everything you wanted to know today, or you hope for more. And we've just got a discount code for you guys to use over the next 7 days at NISA. Feel free to pop in and see us. We're literally just up the road, but thank you all so much.